Hey, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. If you want me to play your deck on stream, feel free to reach out. Contact information in the description below. Also, I stream Legacy live almost every day at twitch.tv/Untitled. So come by and say hi. It's time for some magic. Let's get to it.
All right, welcome back. So we're here for round 4 of the Anzidmtg Invitational, and we have a grueling matchup for you. It is the red-green lands mirror match. So we have Jarvis U. You can actually use multi-Twitch if you want to be able to watch both us and Jarvis do this at the same time. Maybe our producer can get a link in chat to, help out a friend of his. But so Jarvis is going to be going against Tim Pollard. And yeah, it's just a mirror match. They have some similarities, some differences, which maybe we'll be able to highlight. But yeah, and Jarvis is also raising money right now for a good cause. I believe it's for cancer research due to just, certain life situations that have happened in his personal life and stuff like that. So very good cause. He's been raising money all month and stuff. So, we're all here in this channel, have a good time, joke around and stuff. And obviously Jarvis is a great guy. Like both you and I have known Jarvis for quite some time. So definitely go over there and minimally show him some support, some love, especially during times like this.
Yeah, and I believe he said that anything he wins from this tournament will be going to the charity. So that's like a nice show of support as well.
Yep. Definitely a literal, put your money where your mouth is, or put your lands where your mouth is. So yeah, run me through this. A lot of people in Legacy know the basic gist of the red-green lands, but there's so many new tools, some interactions, and maybe what would be good or bad in the lands mirror here.
Yeah, so just real quick, the goal of lands is to, put a lot of lands into play, either actual lands through use of a card like Exploration, which lets you pay more than one land per turn, or Moxime, which is kind of like a pseudo land acceleration. And then you're playing a lot of utility lands that you can use for, to help you out in advancing your game plan, or usually more stopping the opponent's game plan. So the Mana Denial package is very strong. There's 4 Wastelands. I believe there's a Ghost Quarter here, and then there's also 1 Rashad Import, which that number has been as high as 4 in, yesteryears, although this build is playing 4 copies of Urza Saga, really trying to maximize this powerful new card from Modern Horizons 2, and so it sounds like, or looks like, Port has been kind of a shoot for that. But we have the main game plan of Exploration plus Life from the Loam. It's an engine all unto itself, just every turn judging, putting more lands into your graveyard, getting them back with Loam, and putting them into play. And then you also see, some copies of Crop Rotation to find these utility lands when you need them most. Some Valak Exploration for extra card advantage, and then some of these artifacts to go with the Urza Saga plan.
Yep.
In addition to being able to find Mox Diamond, you can find some special ones here as well.
Yeah, so we could transition between the 2 deck lists, but long story short, the main difference is we have the 3rd Valakut Exploration and 3rd Punching Fire versus another land and a Pirate Spellbomb, and then the 2nd Ghost Quarter over a Port.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if these small changes make a huge difference. Maybe Valakut Exploration will come into play in Game 1 because there aren't really great ways for the other side to get rid of it, other than taking a Blast Zone up to 3 and popping it. But I think a lot of what's going to matter this game is the constructs from Urza Saga. It's usually not advisable to go for the 2020 plan in the lands mirror because it's so easy to get blown out by a Crop Rotation or a Caracas or a Wasteland, and then you're down material. You're down 2 lands at the tempo of using your turn to do that. So I think that Urza Saga is going to be a safer, more consistent way that both players try to advance their game plan. And so the kind of artifacts here that are lying around are going to be important in determining, the construct size and, who can attack, who can beat, or who has to be defensive.
Right. There's also Maze of It that's also not great for 2020s.
Exactly, yeah.
But I guess one thing that's interesting is that if it's not Caracas, it's true that the 2020 can hold off some of the constructs that are made off of Urza Saga, so then maybe it becomes a Punching Fire game, and there's going to be a lot of interesting jockeying for a position. But I hope everyone took my advice and got some liquids and maybe got some popcorn and stuff, because we could potentially be here for a while. Or sometimes there's still the basic Wasteland you have the game, but it's not quite as likely when your deck plays quite, so many lands.
Yeah, I'm expecting the game is more likely going to, drag long rather than be a quick kill. Just because, like you said, both players play a lot of lands and ways to recur them. Uh, there's going to be a lot of intricacies for the turns, and how they play out. And for a game like that, watching Jarvis U pilot lands, I think it's going to be a really fun experience. For those who don't know, he won a GP with lands a few years back, and it's just a very solid pilot. Knows the deck inside and out.
Yep. But Tim over here, no slouch themselves, so I'm excited to just see how this one goes. And if you were to guess from the openers, who do you think has the edge right now?
Uh, well, Jarvis has the exploration, which I think is going to be one of the most important cards in the match. So I would certainly say that he has the early lead in that regard. It just letting you pull ahead from your opponent, turn after turn, slowly gain that advantage is going to be very important for sure.
Yeah, and a pretty timely draw step. So there's also the Light from the Loam, so you can start churning through things while also having like the Valkut exploration and normal exploration, and just get to start going off.
Yeah, the exploration duo is certainly something that this deck is working towards in most of the games where it pulls out a win. They just synergize so well together, letting you play a land for turn, flip over a land with exploration, play the land off of exploration, flip another card, maybe find like a crop rotation alone or whatever you need.
And we even get to Loam a turn sooner here by hitting it off of the
Yeah,
exploration and then being able to
yeah,
dredge it.
absolutely. Most of these like sort of like impulse exile effects leave the cards in exile. Exploration is one of the few that actually throws it into the graveyard, which is very beneficial for the land strategy. As we see here, putting a loam just straight into the graveyard, and then also if you hit lands that you don't want to play or can't play, throwing them into the graveyard for future loams is also very important.
And then drawing another exploration, so it just keeps on getting worse every time we want to commentate about something else.
Yeah, it's gonna get worse and worse. You know, the lands deck does have access to Bajuka Bog and potentially crop rotation to find it. And so that is maybe a potential way to, for Tim to break out of this squeeze. But outside of that, I don't see much they can use to pull back into the game. And Jarvis, knowing that, wisely gets rid of Tim's resources here.
Yeah, so just you're able to fire off two wastelands there due to having two explorations in play, and then play Urza Saga. So you can start presenting a threat. We know that we can kill the next Urza Saga, or we can just get another wasteland right now because we have Loam already.
Mm-hmm.
Just stepping
Yeah,
back
this
to
is
zero.
yeah, this is everything the lands deck wants to be doing, for sure. Just playing multiple lands per turn, making sure the opponent can't cast spells through mana denial, and then just like some card advantage sprinkled in between.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't save you this time. I mean, you said it was probably gonna be a very long, grindy match, but here we are, probably like a turn 5 concession or something.
Yeah, I think Anu absolutely put the longest, most grueling match on camera right before he had to jump into commentary. But Jarvis is doing us a solid by hopefully making it not that burdensome.
Yep. So getting a forest, so just seeing a bunch of wastelands and not Ghost Quarter. And on the previous turn, Jarvis played a crop rotation to get wasteland. But if you get the Ghost Quarter, then they just get the forest off of it anyway. So you kind of just have to do this play, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Firing off the crop rotation to get Bajuka Box, so that's exactly the line you outlined there. But we know that Jarvis had this Life from the Loam that they had the whole time, and it just so happened that they hit one off of the Valkut exploration.
Yeah, so this will certainly stem the bleeding, and it's going to be important for Tim to have this line available so that he stops getting wastelanded every turn. I think Jarvis is going to be looking for either another wasteland or another way to have access to that. And with the two fetch lands and the Valak exploration working here, plus the explorations allowing him to churn through, he's going to get a lot of looks at another copy of Wasteland.
Yep. So that Valakut exploration found a crop rotation, but just hitting another. Let's get all the information as to how this turn can develop. Maybe play another fetch land, just see 4 more cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Finding
Like you
Thespian
said,
Stage and Depths.
Yep, and I'm not quite sure how many extra
And
lands.
Wasteland.
I'm not quite sure how many extra lands
One
Jarvis
more.
has for turn one more. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
we play. Oh no, we played Foothills, Heath, and Stage. So that's actually all of them. But they go to the graveyard, so we could always loan them back next turn.
exactly. In addition to dealing damage, Tim is going to be down to 12 life, assuming no other cards come out from under the exploration this turn. And we have this Urza Saga here threatening to make some constructs as well, which will be at minimum 3/3.
Right.
And depending on what he wants to get, he could get the Retrofitter Foundry, which is an artifact that makes artifacts, and so obviously it synergizes quite well with the Saga, and just having a ton of mana.
So I know that there's some interesting things that can happen with Urza Saga and Thespian Stage and other lands and stuff. So maybe you can outline that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. Since we're in a bit of garbage time here, I can start talking about some of the trickier interactions between Stage and Saga. The basic thing that happens here is that if you use Thespian Stage to copy Urza Saga, eventually it will get to the point where it gains the ability to make a construct token. And if you then use Thespian Stage to copy some other land, could be Taiga, could be Wasteland. Usually Forest is the safest. Yeah, usually Forest is the safest, but anything you want really. It will keep that ability to make construct tokens, but you will no longer have to, sacrifice it in a turn or two. And so that can be the ultimate game plan of just making a construct every turn at that point.
Right. It's because the card itself is gaining a line of text, but then it's morphing into these other things. It's like if you put on the text shirt, but you just change who's wearing the shirt every time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like as we all humans, move throughout life, we gain these skills, and then we take them with us where we go, and then Thespian Stage is just mimicking that for us.
So I didn't think we'd have such an existential conversation here and stuff, but that's cool.
Magic is just a subset for life, man.
Okay,
You certainly learn a
so
lot from it. Yeah, you can take it with you.
we see Tim just trying to couple things together with their Valakut exploration, just seeing if they can do something, but it feels like there's some degree of inevitability on Jarvis' side right now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, just going back to the early turns, is that Jarvis had the exploration starting on turn one, and so just got to do more things, take more game actions with their turn. We see that Tim has access to Life from the Loam and a bunch of good lands to get with it, but being restricted to one land per turn really puts a kind of cap in what they can possibly do.
Right, and this game could have potentially went differently if there wasn't an exploration from Jarvis. Tim did have Crucible and Valakut exploration and Life from the Loam, so just a lot of the other engine cards, just not arguably the most important one.
Yeah, and that is definitely a tough decision. Mulligans is, do you go for, very low to find the most important one, but potentially not have other engine cards, or do you keep a hand that can play a long game well and just kind of hope your opponent doesn't have the exploration? And I don't even disagree with Tim's decision there, because an exploration without the other stuff going on is also not particularly powerful, because you just run out of things to do.
Yeah, it's kind of a very interesting culmination strategy. Obviously the sum of the parts is better than the individual, but what hands do you have to mulligan in that sort of case? There's still this resource aspect to the matchup.
Yeah, I will say that, playing the blue decks with the cantrip suite, you make a lot of decisions in the course of a game, but one decision that I think is a lot easier with those decks is the Keeper's Mulligan, because so many of your hands you can just keep. Island Ponder keep is kind of a meme at this point, but it became a meme for good reason. It's usually enough to keep any hand, regardless of what the other four cards are.
Right.
You don't get that luxury with these sorts of decks, and so you have to kind of just build that up over a long period of time of playing with it and seeing what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of a theme in some of the matches that we've seen lately that the non-blue decks utilize the mulligan better than, because their overall density is a lot higher, but they need the exact combination of certain cards. So it's mulliganing is being down a card, but if you're not spending as much time spinning your wheels, or oh, you played this 2-of in your deck and you kept this 3 cantrip hand and you just hope you find it, or you can just look at a fresh 7 and find it. So it's pretty
Definitely.
interesting. I wonder if
It
it's
is very
possible.
interesting, yeah.
I wonder if it's possible to like construct your blue decks or want your blue decks to be in a way that you can actually like build it to either sideboard in a way that mulligans more aggressively or play it in a way that's more aggressive. Like maybe there's something to be learned if a blue legacy blue mage plays more of these decks that don't play blue and vice versa. Maybe there's just some more optimal mulliganing strategy that's being looked over and we're too much playing into the status quo.
It's possible. It would definitely depend on like the relative power level of like the cards you're looking for versus the power level of the cantrips.
Right, like your sneak and shows mulligans are very different than your like random control deck that's trading pound for pound control deck.
Yes, absolutely. There's certainly sneak and show experts that perform well with the deck when it's not particularly well positioned in the metagame and it's built up from the different mulligan heuristics that you have to use that they know that other people just don't have developed. But to one of the points you made, playing other decks that are outside of like your favorite strategy, even if you don't end up playing them long term, it's gonna give you some skills that you can take with you. Going back, even just playing against it, knowing how they play, what like sequences might mean for like the hidden information of cards in hand, and also just like what you don't like to see. Like if you're playing lands and you hate seeing like when they force the X spell or have Y card, you can then develop your game plan to look for those cards or counter the right spell. So there's always something to be learned when you're playing Magic, no matter kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, actually, like to that point, when I used to test a lot for and have more time for, say, Legacy and Modern, where I would play Grixis Delver and Jeskai Control respectively, unless if it's highly experimental, I actually spent more of my time testing all the other decks and not playing a single game with Grixis Delver or Jeskai before the tournament because I just want to see, oh, does this new deck break the format? Do I actually need to consider playing that or adjust my plan much more and stuff like that? So, or I would play like Grixis Control and see what's the minimal amount I could do with the Grixis Delver to make it like a control deck and stuff like that. So, just like very much trying to understand like the enemy, that way I can do my stuff better.
And that's a smart plan when you have the reps that I'm sure you had, with Delver, given your years of experience, it's just like riding a bike for the most part, and so
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can spend your time looking at other things.
So
we do see Jarvis, take down that game
Yep.
for sure. Given that they were so far ahead, yeah.
And I think their sideboards might be relatively similar. So let's start with Jarvis' sideboard minimally. So, it's kind of heavy-handed with like all these fours, and it's because your core strategy kind of like does its things and already has its built-in percentages, and then you want to play the highest impact like cards and then figure it out from there.
Yeah, this is something you see very commonly in Legacy with fair strategies that aren't playing blue. A ton of their sideboard is going to be dedicated to anti-combo hate. And we see that here with the Force Sphere of Resistance, the Torpor, which is can hit things out of like decks like Taxes or Elves, but I think is mainly there for Doomsday specifically. And then the Power Blast for like the blue combo decks. In the Lands Mirror, I imagine that we're going to see Force of Vigors because of all the important enchantments that we talked about in the game. Or Saga also being an enchantment, funnily enough. So you have that value there. And then probably the Endurances as well, just dealing with the graveyard. If you can break up the Loam engine, that can be very important. One thing I'll be looking to see is if Endurance is drawn, do the players, I'm assuming that Tim has Endurance as well, do the players decide to nuke the graveyard in response to a Life from the Loam, or do they decide to let the Loam resolve, get back the lands now, but then they don't have access to it for the rest of the game? So that's something I'll be looking for.
And then in terms of sideboarding, I know you phrased the like dark depth aspect of just not being very viable. Does that mean you go down to 1 or even 0 dark depths here?
I am not incredibly well versed in how lands likes to sideboard, but I've even heard players talk about going down to 0 and just hope your opponent leaves one in so that you can copy theirs with your stage if they're doing such a thing. Other than being pitched to Mox Diamond, is just like a piece of cardboard that says land on it. It ends up not being very useful, and sometimes even a liability. Because if your opponent has a stage, they can make a Merit Lage off of your Dark Depths. So I think that is likely going to be one of the cards cut, and then outside of that, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think it could be like Tabernacle, Spellbomb, and 1 Maze of Ith or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That some of the lands that are in place to stop creatures, while they're good against Urza Saga makes 2 creatures, and those lands are only good against 1. So I could see those being cut and just relying on Wasteland to deal with the sagas.
So we actually see Tim with Dark Depths still in their deck, so we see a discard to Mox Diamond, but maybe it's just a one of, or maybe they just have an overall different plan for the matchup. Like,
Yep.
one thing that's very interesting when you see mirror matches, it's like everyone has the same tools, but sometimes there's some sort of leveling aspect, or their plan's different. Like the way they have the same cards, but they might play it differently, or they might say, "Oh, in your subset of exploration hands where you don't have life from the loam, I just know all the lands you have access to, so I can do this other thing." We actually see Jarvis with the Dark Depths. So maybe you know they're both not subscribing to the philosophy that you mentioned, but the cuts had to come somewhere. Maybe it's just Mazabeth. Maybe your ability to go proactive with Dark Depths is worth enough.
Absolutely. And both these players are much more experienced with lands than I am. And if there's one thing that's true about Magic players, almost no matter what archetype they play, they like to think about the mirror a lot. And so I imagine that whether it is the one of, and they just kind of both happen to have it in their opener, which is not mathematically that likely. So I'm imagining there's more than one copy in each player's deck. They certainly know things that I don't, and are hoping to maybe, weave their way through, to a spot where that combo is good.
Yeah, I have famously or infamously said to my friend group that I've never registered a deck for a tournament where I don't think I have a 55% win rate in the mirror. I just always want to know how to beat myself if I have to play.
And now I'm sure that's a mix for you of both, like having maybe like 1 or 2 specific cards that are good, but then also just like having played the matchup a lot and knowing what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. Speaking of the game, what are these players doing?
Yeah, so there's like some exploration action, and then you can see the Force of Vigor in Tim's hand. So you want to line that up, ideally to kill 2 very important things, because you don't have that many of them. You have 3 Force of Vigors, and you have no way to actually look for them. So you want that to be like a real haymaker. So there's some interesting things you can do to line up your Force of Vigor appropriately, but note that it's turned off this turn, so don't have to worry about it right now. It's not like you can pitch a card to play, but they both have Exploration. Tim has Crucible in play, but maybe Jarvis is trying to set up this stage my Urza Saga sort of line, but we also see a 2020 in play, so with all the shields down.
Yeah, and Jarvis, while the shields were down, the Wasteland was tapped, going for the 2020. However, it looked, the flash of an eye, it looked like Tim top decked Mazabeth. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this progresses, where it's a temporary check for the Merit Lage, but it's not a permanent one because you can find Wasteland, you can find Pithing Needle. Maybe that is part of it, is that because both decks are playing Pithing Needle now, you have kind of an answer to the answer to your Merit Lage, and so it can get through more often. That might be what these players are thinking about.
Right. I mean, it's kind of interesting. So let's see. Being able to recur the Wasteland here, and you have another land drop for the turn, so you can also play Maze. Then you can also assemble your own 2020, so then you can kind of get to like some semblance of parity, but interesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be intense. When you're staring down the lethal threat, I think that the adrenaline starts pumping. How you sequence your turns, you feel like you have to do it like very carefully and very deliberately to not mess any like little thing up, because if you make even the smallest mistake, game's over. But it looks like Tim has navigated this spot, or this game, to a spot where Jarvis has a 2020 in play, but it's not going to be dealing damage, at least not right now. I can't fully see every card in the graveyard. I don't know if Wasteland is one of the cards. It looks like it wasn't, otherwise it would be picked up. That being said, the options that Jarvis did have available to get back are all very powerful. Re-putting the copy of Thespian Sage Dark Depths into his hand, so that if this token goes away, for keepsies, they can redeploy, and then just playing out Saga plus Stage.
So let's see. So you're able to Wasteland, and so you can't Wasteland the Stage here because they would just be able to copy a Force in response. But you kind of just like keep things in check. Like, oh, if you do go to copy anything, then I can Wasteland your Stage this turn.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Tim wants to use this Force of Vigor on, in combination with the Wasteland, because like we mentioned, Saga is an enchantment, but Wasteland also checks that. So it'll be interesting to see if he wants to hit like the Exploration and like a Mox Diamond, or the Construct token, which is currently, was chipping in for damage before the second Mazavith came down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you might not have to worry that much right now, just because you have like double Mazavith. Just like the threats on the board, so you can kind of sculpt your plan. And now choosing the spot to play Force of Vigor, so okay, that stage like involved a lot of investment. Now take your Exploration, so you actually don't have a Saga and you don't have a stage anymore. So
Yeah, I agree. This
pretty
was
good play there.
I think that was incredibly well played by Tim, where they didn't have access to the Saga, and now they don't have access to the Exploration. So if they're judging Loam, it's like an incredibly slow use of their turn. And with the two Mazaviths, there's actually no pressure to life total now either, and they have their engine going of Exploration plus Valakut.
Right. Plus Crucible Worlds. So
Yeah, plus Crucible.
Maybe we just see the full 20 be dealt by Valakut Explorations.
Certainly possible.
Well, so did you see what was hit there? It's a Bajuka Bog.
Whew.
As in, I hope. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at seeing this much of a card and knowing what it is. So that's.
Yeah, you've been better about it than I have during his matches, much to the stream's benefit.
Yeah, and then that one's a crop rotation, so getting to just keep on going off the Valakut Exploration. We saw Mystic Forge before. I think this is just Lanza's Mystic Forge.
Yeah, it seems like if you're not playing the Cantrip Suite, there's a lot of powerful 3 and 4 mana options if you're willing to construct your deck around them, be it artifacts or lands. And we're seeing.
So that one's Life from the Loam, the weird art one, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah. And we see both in game 1 and game 2 so far. It's not been like a super. I'm trying to find like good ways to say this, but
it's been very lots of game actions has taken in very few turns.
Yes, exactly. And one player seems to slowly spiral ahead when they set up their engine. Mm-hmm. And so even though, Jarvis did just find an answer to the Valakut Exploration, it still feels like they're behind because Tim has more things going on. They have Exploration plus Loam. Mm-hmm. And they have a 2020. And Jarvis has one turn to find an answer to that.
And that's not bad. So we're going to game 3 here.
And yeah, very true. Interesting to see that Punishing Fire was left in. I think it's very clear that the idea is to hit a construct when it's small. And so if you can keep the construct small indefinitely, Punishing Fire keeps working. And so I like the logic behind that.
Yeah, maybe it's just that your other cards are worse also. Like, we get to look at it again. So, like, Tabernacle seems like a cut. Then maybe some have Dark Depths, but we saw both players play it. Maybe it's kind of tough. It could be possible that there's only one Punishing Fire. Like, if you're churning through your deck that much, then like you don't need that many Punishing Fires.
Yeah.
And then Mazavith was definitely clutch there.
Yeah, it's tough. Knowing what to bring in is usually much easier than knowing what to cut, because you have to weigh how good a card you're cutting will be in like a variety of different situations, in addition to how common the situations will be, right? So yeah, it's a very in-depth process.
So one consideration I have, and once again, like, I'm also not really a lands expert or anything like that, but maybe you don't bring in all 3 endurance. Like, maybe things are already not going well if they already have the ability to play a Loam per se. So like, maybe you could just focus on making your draws as dense as possible, of just like, this fights directly with a lot of situations and like pushes me far ahead. So maybe they're only bringing the 3 Force Figures, and that's why we've seen so many cards that we thought could potentially come out.
That's certainly possible. And if your game plan is revolving around judging your Loam frequently, putting more of these non-land cards into your deck and taking lands out
Well, there we
becomes
see an
less
endurance.
ideal. Although there is an endurance in the opener. So certainly some number are in. Although it looks like Tim is mulliganed to 5 at this point.
Yeah, so slightly aggressive, looking for more engine cards. So both of those were a typical, like, I have lands and spells, but, like, it was more of this, like, doesn't really win the game.
Yeah, which is, in a blue player's mentality, lands and spells, why would I ever mulligan that? But uh, Tim wisely recognizing that, he didn't want a repeat of game 1 where he just got, exploration out of the game. Unfortunately, the 5-card hand did not have, that fast start that I'm sure he was looking for. That's part of Magic. Sometimes you look at 21 cards, but you don't necessarily see the combination that you're looking for.
So
Although,
Jarvis, sorry.
yep.
So
No, you got
Jarvis,
it, yeah.
yeah, Jarvis holding off on the Mox Diamond. So part of it is maybe you don't want to expose it to, say, like just like a Force of Vigor, but like you don't really have anything else in play. But more importantly, it's that I don't have a loam right now, so I don't actually know what land I want to discard to it, and there's not really much benefit from having it in play yet.
Yeah, I agree. There's no, if you're not doing anything with your mana anyway, you don't need the acceleration. As you said, you can wait longer to maybe discard a better land or the correct land, and also protects it from Force of Vigor. So we see kind of like the opposite in Game 3 from what was happening earlier on, where in the first 2 games, either one player or both players kind of came out guns blazing. Now both players are playing a slow game.
This is the one that Anurag wanted. The slow game 3, grueling matchup.
Yeah, grueling matchup. Although with things going slower, it's almost easier to keep track of what's going on. So it does cut both ways there. As neither player really doing much of anything, and I'm sure that Tim isn't super happy about having to run out the bog for no value here, but with him mulliganing to 5 and not having much else going on, I think it is still important to develop your mana.
Well, so one decision I want to talk about is the decision to not play Valakut Awakening or Life from the Loam with the Wooded Foothills. Like, there are other decisions that could have been made here to be a little bit more proactive. So why do you think Tim is holding on to those?
I think it's a mix of not being under pressure because the opponent isn't like presenting something that you need to act on, and just wanting to get the most value out of these cards, given that you're on the mulligan and given that your opponent is representing Force of Vigor. You know, I think that's the goal. Is they want to wait, and also because they have their own Force of Vigor, it's nice for them to hold up their mana in case Jarvis does something, fast and explosive. So it's kind of like a confounding or like compilation of a lot of small factors that lead to this holding pattern that we see.
Interesting. Yeah. Like it's kind of interesting because I think the typical Magic player would think like, oh, I'm behind. You're not really doing anything. I could play Valakut Exploration and Life Alone, which would be like +1 card after a while, and like start to recoup the mulligan. But instead, Tim is just being like, oh no, I need to be very precise. I need to make sure I'm doing the right thing and not allowing Jarvis to take certain lines. By leaving up cards like Crop Rotation, maybe I can also just induce certain misplays or certain risks that would otherwise not be taken.
Exactly. Yeah. Getting one land back into your hand with Life from the Loam, it's not that powerful. And then if Jarvis has endurance or crop rotation, he potentially loses access to that for the rest of the game. And so it can be better to at least try and get your 3 lands out of the deal before exposing it.
So one pretty good play there. So people are familiar with Urborg, but not everyone's familiar with the Yavimaya. So being able to use the Urza Saga to tap for a green and then crop rotate itself was pretty sweet.
Yes, it's definitely a nice inclusion in these decks. You have so many lands that either tap for colorless or don't tap for mana at all. And this has always been kind of one of the struggles for the lands deck, is you surprisingly don't have the best mana given that you're playing 30-ish lands. And so this has been a nice addition to crop rotate for or just draw naturally, that can kind of unlock your mana for the turn. And also allowing Dark Depths to tap for mana is very powerful, as we saw in the Turbo Depths builds from Legacies formats past.
Right. So Tim went for a Wasteland on the, I believe, it was Thespian stage, or Yeah.
Did they crop? Yeah, yes. That's
And then Jarvis, yeah, it was copying Urza Saga, and then Jarvis got to crop rotation to then be able to get Bajuka Bog to nail all those lands. So now there's this life from the loam, but like without any lands to get that are like pretty efficient. But you can only bog once at instant speed like that off of crop rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's kind of a close game here where, Jarvis has the mini exploration and Tim has the larger exploration.
Yeah.
And both are like good cards by themselves, but not great without the other. Um, and so, but I think on the whole, the 3-mana Valakut exploration is slightly stronger and kind of like a stalled game state such as this. And so Jarvis does decide to destroy it with the Force of Vigor, which I do like.
Yeah, so one thing that's interesting here is that you have the beatdown plan of the endurance, so kind of like one thing you outlined before game 2, where you can just like start attacking. But you can also use Life from the Loam to, I think, Wasteland every turn? Or no, our Wasteland got removed. So eventually, I think Jarvis is going to be able to make constructs and then be able to fight back. But you also have this Force of Vigor, so you might be able to, like, there's some just like interesting back and forth there. And there's also Surprise 2020 whenever. But it all depends on whether or not Tim also has stage up, whether or not they can make 2020 as well. So lots of interesting decisions here.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth. This matchup, the mirror match, is incredibly intricate in, what both players can do, based on how much mana they have open, what utility lands they have access to in their deck. And so, like you said, there was kind of a back and forth here. Tim looks like he's deciding to fire off the Force of Vigor now on the Saga and the Exploration. And I think I like this. If the game plan is to attack with Endurance a bunch, I think getting rid of the construct tokens is important. Jarvis, if he wants to, could copy the Saga. I'm not quite sure what happened with the Thespian stage there.
I think that might be a misclick, right? So, because the Thespian stage was a wasteland, right? And you wanted to be able to copy the Urza Saga?
Yeah. Did he accidentally use it to wasteland something?
I think so.
Oof. Brutal. That's rough, obviously.
Yeah, but
mistakes
it's about
happen,
just it's just about seeing how you recover from here. So
what I was
it
thinking
happens.
as well. And this crop rotation is still one of the more important cards to have access to. Potentially, allowing Jarvis to plot a very sticky situation. I think the card he wants to draw most right now is probably Light from the Loam. Although this 2020 also is relevant here, where he could potentially choose to play it out, and then, if Tim went to copy it with Thespian stage, he could crop rotate for his own stage and make the 2020. I suppose with unknown cards in hand and potentially lands in the yard that could, help do something about that. He chose not to take that line.
This endurance just go into town.
The coast to coast is some people like to say.
Oh wow! And now you can attack with endurance and end of combat untap it.
You can, or you can just keep the maze up to protect against anything that you aren't sure about. And so I think, although we said Loam, one of the most important draws here, Jarvis does find it. The Bajuka Bog is in play, so even if one of the unknown cards was crop rotation, this couldn't be broken up. I suppose Endurance could break it up, but that's not what Tim has, and so Jarvis gets his pick of 3 lands here. Be interesting to see which one he goes with, because of course he only does have 1 per turn. You could go with Saga to potentially try to make constructs. You could go with Stage to copy your opponent's Maze of It to stop this Endurance from being down. Really close decisions here.
The problem if you play the Saga is that your the Thespian stage will copy the Saga, and then they'll just make infinite constructs before you're able to like make enough to be able to block. I do find that's interesting. That was Wasteland instead of Thespian stage, but maybe your plan is just a crop rotation for Maze of Ith here.
That's my guess too. I think going down to 2 is definitely very risky, given that there are punishing fires in the list, not necessarily in the deck post board, but you don't know that, and so it's something to keep in mind. We do see Jarvis do the play that you outlined, where he, gets the Mazavith.
Yeah, it seems like next turn you have to play Thespian Stage then.
Yeah, which is interesting. I'm surprised that the Wasteland was played out last turn instead of the stage.
Well, I think
guess
it's just out of respect, right? Like if your opponent assembles a Dark Depths there.
yeah, and that makes sense too.
Playing the Saga is interesting.
If your plan is to
It's
find,
fine.
sorry, I was gonna say if your plan is to find the Thespian Stage, then playing out the Wasteland to be more safe makes a lot of sense.
Well, so if your plans to play Urza Saga this turn, you have to play Wasteland the previous turn. That way they can't Thespian Stage your Saga. But that
Okay.
also, like, I do think, yeah, okay. So that's pretty much what we're gonna see here. But now you can loam it back, play stage, and then copy what you actually want to copy, if you want to.
There's so much back and forth happening here. Every land you play with stage in play is like a land your opponent potentially has access to, but you need the positive things. There's Wasteland involved. There's a lot. It's a lot to commentate. I definitely wouldn't want to be, having to make the decisions here on top of all that.
But both of these players have plenty of reps with the deck and have surely faced the mirror before. We're seeing a lot of tight technical play to the point that Jeff and I are learning things by
Absolutely,
by seeing their decision making process, which is pretty awesome.
Let me see. Tim, forever the gentleman, not even bothering to attack with the endurance, just knowing it would get mazed, and both these players have enough mana that the fact that maze can tap for green otherwise is not really a hindrance.
While I do agree with being the gentleman in those cases, the fact that Yavimaya does allow it to tap for mana, I mean, I guess there's no end of turn I'm gonna Sphinx's Revelation or do anything, so it's not like I'm gonna need that extra mana, but
yeah, I can't think of enough. Nothing. Yeah, it's not nothing. I can't think of enough that the green mana would have to do in a turn cycle.
It's fair for the life equity, as a human.
Yes, that is also very important to work in. And the second endurance is an important pickup.
Except now there's two mazes.
That is a very common experience of playing against lands, is okay, they have maze in play, treading water. Oh, I just drew another creature, but they just drew another way to either an actual Mazavith or a way to copy it.
But there's a Ghost Quarter on the other side, so and then Loam can get back another Ghost Quarter, so there could just be but finding an endurance.
And this is important because of no access to Loam now.
Right. If endurance wasn't found there, Tim would have been able to just go, okay, I'll Ghost Quarter your Mazavith, and then I can loan back my Ghost Quarter your other Mazavith, and now I have these two endurances and you're dead. Here, Tim can still take the same line, but only one of them is going to get through, giving Jarvis another turn. Yeah. And then if you do that, Jarvis might be able to make a 20-20. So it could actually be 20-20 and endurance versus two endurances if you end up tapping out of all of your Ghost Quarters.
Yeah, again, very close.
Crop rotation. I think that might change it.
That might change it. I think if I were Tim, I would start by Ghost Quartering the Mazavith. And it's important that it's Ghost Quarter here and not Wasteland, because Maze could copy the forest, but that's not saving you at this point. So I think we are going to see that line you mentioned of Ghost Quartering both mazes, putting Jarvis down to 2 and trying to win the game next turn.
Yeah, and that's a good distinction between Ghost Quarter and Wasteland. You're able to Ghost Quarter the maze there because that was a stage, because it wasn't going to be able to copy a forest to save itself too. So here we see the shove, but then you have another crop rotation backup if anything gets too dicey for you. So Jarvis is a little bit back to the wall here, but
certainly back to the wall.
Some draw steps.
Yeah, he's going to see a few cards this turn with
a few more.
Yeah, with the Valak Exploration.
2 is pretty much the same as 1, except you can't fetch again.
Correct, and so he's choosing to play out the fetch to get 1 extra look because again just needs to find something, and there's no way for him currently to make a 20-20 with.
So it looks like it's Thespian Stage and crop rotation are under the Valakut Exploration.
Down crop rotation. Oh my goodness! Yep. So now he can find either another Mazavith, potentially something I'm not even thinking of right now. I think it would have to be another Mazavith. I think there's 2 in the list, and so
he knows that 1 Mazavith isn't good enough due to the graveyard currently being Life from the Loam plus Ghost Quarter, so that's just like dead on board, right?
Yes,
So,
that's true.
but it might still just be the best you can do. I thought what he potentially could have done was, oh, I guess he already played his land for the turn.
Wait, are you seeing this? Did he hit another crop
Yeah, he
rotation?
had another crop
Oh
rotation.
my god, that's
So let's
amazing.
see. So you don't have any more land drops this turn. Obviously, you're gonna cast the other crop rotation. I think I think you went through two Maze of Ith, so he has a third.
I'm not sure if he went through because one was the copy. I'm not sure. I believe
He,
he was
he,
playing 3 in the
he has
list.
nothing in his exile zone, so that means that there's one in the graveyard, one in play. But give me a
Unless it was sided
staple.
out. We talked about potentially it being sided
Oh,
out, and
wow.
sometimes it's not useful, and that might come into play here, where in this incredibly specific scenario, flipping crop rotation to your Valakut not being enough,
Wow.
and it looks
Just
like that might be enough
real
for
back
Tim
and
to take the
forward.
game.
Yeah, no Glacial Chasm in the list or anything like that, so
Yep, no chasm, and like you said, no land drop for turn, so you couldn't play the Dark Depths to make another blocker.
right,
I think Tim's
exactly.
got it. Judge's Loam.
Yep. Gets back the Ghost Quarter. Looks like the writing's on the wall here. Jarvis might just pack it in here, seeing everything.
Might just, yeah.
Just
We know
taking it
this.
all in.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta take this, take it in, accept it. Either way,
Yeah.
incredible game, incredible back and forth, tons of decision making from both sides that was difficult and that they
Yeah.
played very well.
I really like that we got to see pretty much, I feel like, the three types of ways this matchup can go. The super aggro game one, and then the game two where it's just like, hey, I have like Force of Vigor, so I'm kind of breaking up your things, and a little like tit for tat strategy. And then like game three was like who knows who would have won if like those endurances weren't in play, but it's like, hey, I actually have this creature and you don't have an answer for a while, so now like I'm just putting you to the test every turn, like from here on out. So very awesome match, and